What if you could feel a settling in your mind, heart, body, and soul when it comes to the design of your legacy by the end of this episode? I'd like to welcome Simon to the Design Your Legacy podcast this lovely day. Welcome, Simon.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It's a joy to be here and have a chance to chat with you, Angelina.
It's my pleasure to host you, and I believe you're joining from, is it New York or New Hampshire in the United States of America?
Yeah, so our house literally sits 1 mile from the Massachusetts-New York border on the Massachusetts side. So far, far, far western. We're in the Berkshire Hills of Massachusetts.
Wonderful. Well, would you like to start us out with an icebreaker, whether professionally or personally, and then we'll jump into the first question?
Yeah, sure. The icebreaker would be in thinking about legacy, the three-body problem is always with you, and we can talk about what that is. It's a physics thing. The sooner you and your trusted loved ones can embrace that together and as a team, the legacy that requires many people grows right there from that moment forward.
Yeah, I think it's wonderful. And you've had an extraordinary life so far in being exposed to lots of different ideas. And we're also going to jump into that because I think there's such a depth in, if I think about the metaphor of a well, that you're going to bring both to today's conversation, but also to your work overall. So let's
Mm.
jump in. All right. You've built CrowBox partners around helping families of means activate their next generation, also known as the rising generation. So, what was the moment that made you realize the greatest wealth gap isn't financial, it's emotional as well as educational?
Yeah, it was the moment that I was invited to form the company by a mom from Southwest Florida whose daughter had had just a really good experience working with me around financial literacy, entrepreneurship, and economics. I was an economics teacher at the time. And in that moment, as she was asking me to help their family with a, nine-digit, nine, you know, a significant legacy challenge, it was in that moment that I realized that it existed only because this mom said to me, for people like us, there are few good options, which made no sense to me at the time.
Well, I
Uh,
think one of the things that happens is who can you trust when you get to that level of resources with not just who can you trust, but then the second part of with good advice that actually knows what they're talking about. And I think one of the
exactly.
things you mentioned in our preamble and our icebreaker was you were talking with an associate in New Hampshire, and that associate said, most clients just want their problem solved. Can you solve their problem with good sound advice, not
Yeah,
fluff?
yeah, yeah, yeah. And so the thing to understand, I think it's taking being a dad, it's taken being in charge of hundreds of other people's children to sort of appreciate the complexity of legacy, of all these things that are really fundamentally about family and conversations that are beyond the numbers. I feel like I'm not exactly answering the question, but you know,
Well, let me
yeah,
add something to here in terms of context. You had an educational background. And what I mean by that is you taught business skills to
yeah,
various students. I think you may have
yeah,
also served in the capacity of a dean. And because you had
yes.
the trust
Hmm.
of
Oh, yes, yes,
those
yes.
customers and those families and those parents,
Mm.
then it's almost as if, and this happens all the time, it's, well, Simon, if you can handle this, what else can you handle? Because we already know we do business with those we like, trust, and
Yeah,
know. So
yeah,
can you
yeah,
handle this? Because
yeah.
we don't know how to solve it. Yeah.
Good. And thank you for that because you reminded me of where I wanted to sort of end that last thing, which was the really important thing about legacy is you can't have someone do it for you.
Mm, mm,
You really can't have someone do it for you. It's the families plus
mm,
people like us to support the family in building it themselves. So if someone says, come in, solve
mm.
it, they're speaking as if I am a consultant, that the family needs my genius to fix them. That's almost never the case.
Yeah, I think it's hard to initially bring up these conversations. One of the things you also mentioned in our preamble this morning is legacy happens one conversation at a time. And you
Mm,
brought up this other great metaphor of that when it comes to family traditions, they weigh nothing. And yet you brought up the blade. Say more about that. And I know we're kind of jumping
mhm,
around a little bit. I think it's all interconnected.
yeah, yeah. So what we were talking about earlier was this idea that um, I don't know. I feel like The blade is one of those things where, as a leader, you have to create direction. You have to create intention. Doesn't mean your fingerprints have to be on everything, but there's an orchestration that is different from innovation, which is different from agitating. Legacy requires all those things. We were just talking about, like, when it comes down to brass tacks, how do you do this at a basic lived level? And I think, we can talk about that, but I think really the harder thing is getting alignment at the very front, that we even need to do this, and that legacy is an us thing, and it's got to be an us thing. And once it's off of an us thing, it's not really strong.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to bring up one other point before I go on to the next
Mhm.
question. You said in the preamble, we carry so many good stories, but yet when the elders are afraid to share these stories, it could be due
Mhm.
to this idea or this fear of, well, what if they're not relevant? What if the
Mhm.
next generation or the other members in the room don't want to hear the stories? But then what is it that we carry forward? And I thought um, I wanted you to say more about that because that's again
Sure.
how if
Sure.
legacy happens one conversation at a time,
Yeah.
what are those roadblocks? And then how do we go
Yeah.
to what I call the canoe by the lake?
Good.
It's like it's a Girl Scout or Boy Scout leader. How do we go from point A to point B? Because that's
Hmm.
where the magic happens.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's really important because for some families, they see it as a tree. For some families, it's a rock. I worked with fun family, like, this is our family rock, which was great. Other families have different, names for it. So actually, let's start right there,
Okay.
because what you just named, Angelina, is the thing that blocks legacy, which is, you said there's this thing. It's kind of funny. You have to just have that little, like, weird moment of uncertainty for anything to happen.
Yeah, well, I think one of the things is even going back to this idea of like a Girl Scout or Boy Scout leader and getting to the canoe by the lake, it's how do we leave our comfort zone? Because there could be unknowns. There's the beautiful waterfall, but there's also the poison ivy. And I know that's simplistic, but at least it
Yeah.
makes designing a legacy or planning a legacy adventurous because
Yeah.
it's more than just death and taxes. When you get really into what makes a family unique in their values and their stories and their history, it's as exciting as taking that hike to the canoe by the lake.
Oh, no doubt. I mean, 100%. Is it possible for me to share my screen? Is
Yes,
that
yes, please. Yes.
okay? So, because I feel like one of the things I'm struggling to capture here is, just something that visual learners get to experience too infrequently. So when I sit down to talk to somebody about legacy, to your earlier point about how do we get from A to B, you
Hmm.
need a map that everyone can look at and talk about. This is a great place to start. Because what it says is, right now, what feels clear, what's chaotic, and you work into this. This is a very specific legacy structuring tool that lets the conversation proceed without anyone being at fault. You're just simply inputting and then starting to process what you're hearing. Because it's that moment of, it's like, it's awkward for me to be on the show thinking about your audience. It's awkward for your audience to ask the questions they really want to ask. It's awkward, like sex ed class, and yet we all have to and deserve something better. All we have to do is develop common language and a little bit of trust. And once you can use these sorts of words to mean specific things about how do we move forward, the pressure comes way down. Because when I say I'm confused, that doesn't make it an emergency. It just means I'm thinking right now.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And what does sinifin mean?
Great. So, Cynefin is the Welsh word for territory.
Ooh, interesting. Okay.
So, because I'm a super dork, I can give you the references to the Harvard Business 2006 or 7 article of the year,
Okay.
which featured Dave's work, Dave Snowden, and this artist Vijay, who is I have a huge crush on because I just love his work because he's able to bring to legacy builders a terrain that we can just talk about honestly, openly, non hysterically, without blame. And what I love, Angelina, about your work is you create those spaces. This is an aid to that. And I can get into any of these specific things related to any specific problem. There is science behind it, but this may not be interesting to your audience right now. This might be too much of a tactical, sort of in the weeds detour. So,
Well, I think it's wonderful in terms of a remedy, but let's circle back for a moment
yeah,
to the problem, because
yeah.
I think that's where individuals can relate because of,
Mm,
this is where I'm stuck right now, or
mm,
if
mm.
they know that their feelings are, we call it naming it in the world of coaching. All right, so
Yes.
let's talk about the hidden problem or the
Mm,
problem hidden in privilege. Why do you
mm.
believe so many affluent individuals and families still struggle to prepare their heirs for the responsibility and oftentimes the emotional burden of inheriting both wealth as well as legacy?
One poor idea is at the root of a tremendous amount of unnecessary stress and tension.
Okay.
The idea is this: fundamentally, a dollar carries with it some sort of corruption. Amass
Mm.
enough of them and you are corrupted by them. That is false.
Oh, that is so interesting because people have so many ideas about money in society. Yes, whether somebody's self-made or there's classism, which is also interesting because about two-thirds of today's affluent are self-made.
Yes. So there are about 1,100 billionaires
Hmm.
in America now.
Hmm.
Of them, 70% are self made.
Yeah, yeah. And so
People should
then,
people should sit with that number because what that says is we have a fantastical dynamism in our economy built on digital technology. And if you're at all looking at the news, you realize that there's a democratization of opportunity going on through AI that is staggering.
yeah. So let's talk about those individuals for a moment because sometimes we can be good at one thing, but it doesn't mean we're going to be good at everything. So, for
Mm-hmm.
instance, if we're talking about those 1,100 billionaires, they may
Mm-hmm.
have skills as a founder, but then are they willing to grow in a growth mindset to then have the skills to prepare others in passing the baton? You're shaking your head, say more.
So if the founder believes that there's some deep exceptionalism
Hmm.
to what they have built, they will then not trust anyone else to be able to be competent in its carrying forward.
Mm,
That's poison.
yeah.
That is a non faith in the future, generally based upon someone's inability to update their mental model of how the world works.
So
And
if we
and
go
in
ahead,
a
please.
digital world, so the 70s in 100 years will be seen as the decade when we entered with like little bits of compute and
Hmm.
came out on the road to something that is what we see right now. That is just a proliferation of compute. It will be transformative in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah. So let me bring up emotional literacy then for a moment. So let's say there are those 1,100 billionaires. They
Mm.
then, in order to really design an amazing holistic legacy, their emotional literacy skills will have to be grown and challenged. Because if somebody, and I don't know if we've had this conversation, if somebody has humility as they're growing their business and their wealth, fantastic. Then instead of the power being at the top, they can flip it and allow themselves to hear voices at the bottom, whether that's the second generation, the third generation, the fourth generation, and welcome those different ideas. But if they don't have that humility, then what we're talking about is a legacy then that may leave with that individual, and they may not pass on. Thank you for sharing this visual. They may not pass on the best of themselves, let alone the stories, if they can't also, that expression is people don't know what you care until they know that people don't care what you know until they know that you care. Yeah,
Bingo.
you're nodding. Say more, please.
Yeah. So you just gave a very, very nice introduction to a large set of ideas. So, in general, in the 20th century, things got built in what you see on the left hand side of this graph. That is how Henry Ford, Alfred P. Sloan, industrialists built things. And we can get into the weeds on this. For any founder to successfully pass forward the true full breadth of their legacy, not just the narrow spectrum, how many dollars, the full spectrum of the human capital, the social all that stuff, the stuff that really sustains the financial capital. You have to make this flip, just like you said. You have to find ways to invite others into pursuing competence. If you
Even
invite
mhm.
if you invite enough others with you who's allegedly part of your legacy, that team does the thing on the right.
Mhm.
They open up the organization to purpose. What
Yeah.
founders don't do is they think, oh, the purpose I felt that drove me to build this thing, it's somehow special, it's unique, it's magical, don't touch it. And they're wrong. It's just fundamentally not true.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought up that Ford name. We both know Jay Hughes, an attorney that has been a
Yes.
guest twice on this podcast, and he spoke about how the Ford family, that particular patriarch, was not kind to his children in the criticism. So if I go again to this idea of the problem hidden in privilege, then how can you prepare the next generation for responsibility, or even this idea of shared values and a shared vision and a shared purpose, um,
Mm-hmm.
if you can't also develop other aspects of yourself, including how to play nice?
Bingo, bingo. And you can see in this organization, if you think about the organizations that are thriving now, any company, they're going to look very much more like the things on the right than the left. The thing on the left is the dinosaur. The thing on the right, it's what's now getting built. And I'm confident in saying this because I work with the people who are doing that building.
Yeah, yeah, very good. I'm glad that you shared this because, again, we have to start somewhere. Everyone has a first day.
That's right.
And yeah, and I think also there's this idea of, well, if let's say the founder, and even let me go back to the 1100 billionaires just for a moment, just as an example. Let's say with those individuals, they could say, but I earned it. And so if they don't know how to work past that bravado for a moment to then build something that school did not
Mm-hmm.
teach them how to build. And
Mm-hmm.
like I think we shared in the conversation of our preamble as well as the icebreaker, it's like you can't just go to your local coffee shop, whether that's Tim Hortons or Starbucks, and somebody invites you to have this conversation where it's easy to talk about news, sports, and weather in our society, but yet there's so many other deeper conversations, in perhaps even more difficult conversations that we need to have, that becomes the glue, the
Mm-hmm.
Velcro of the universe. Okay, let
Mm-hmm.
me
Mm-hmm.
bring up the next
And
question in measuring what
could we
money.
actually
Oh, go ahead.
yeah, could we go back to just, you asked a kind of a specific block earlier, like what's blocking people? It's
Mm,
that basic difficulty that you just named in the transcript a few seconds ago. It's that difficulty initiating. That is the block. Someone feels a bit uncomfortable about it, and they're powerful enough in the family that that blocks the evolutionary conversations from happening. That's what happens.
mm. I think I might title this "The Evolutionary Conversations for Legacy." That'll be the title. Okay.
Love it.
Okay. Measuring what money can't buy. So you use
Mm.
the concept of a triple balance sheet. How does quantifying human and intellectual capital alongside financial capital change how families view, quote, return on investment?
Yeah, yeah. So the triple balance sheet says, and this is just an approximation, if you have significant enough means that they're going to go somewhere else, with the dollars needs to be a sort of care package of instructions that are going to get rewritten by the next generation. The care package has three questions. How do you think well, alone and with the other legacy members? Um, how do you own well as a result of the knowing? So the owning well gets, excuse me, the learning gets you to the owning,
Hmm.
gets you to the living well. So the living well is the profit of the first two things.
Yeah,
It's the
absolutely.
ideas, and then it's the application, it's the coaching of the practices of legacy that then gets the thing going.
Yeah. There's so much also that comes sometimes with success that we don't know about or prepare for, including
Mm,
the commitment to be happy. And I just bring that up because there can oftentimes be isolation that one does not always prepare for. And then they find
mm-hmm,
themselves with a small circle or no circle outside
mm-hmm,
of their work.
mm-hmm,
Yeah. All
mm-hmm.
right. Let me
And
go ahead,
and
please.
so that can be true whether you have $1.5 million in a favela
Hmm.
or $1.5 billion in Menlo Park.
Yeah.
So it's important to understand for your audience the mentality, the siege mentality getting locked in that scarcity mindset. You don't have to have lots of money to have the scarcity mindset. That's the thing. It's the scarcity mindset, to your answer earlier. Like, what stops it? It's scarcity mindset. It's other people can't handle the discomfort. It's like it's the leader blaming other people for the fact that they can't contemplate a change that they can't control. That's really that's where it gets scary for people. And they're not wrong to be scared, but courage is trusting that legacy is a team event.
Very cool. Very cool. That is a golden nugget right there. I think I'll have that for the Twitter clip. Okay, let's transition over to the subject of moving from entitlement to empowerment.
Yes.
What practices or rituals have you seen truly shift a next generation member from passive inheritance to active stewardship?
Yep. So it's a five characters, uh, L-EAF. So I would recommend to your audience going to l-eaf.org, leaf.org. If you want to find a large cache of motivation explosives, that is the place to go.
Oh,
I will meet any of your audience members at that very website, and I can demo for them what's there. Because what I've done in my life is to try to serve a very broad audience. So I serve ultra high net worth people, but I also build those similar tools for people in like the Nativity Miguel Coalition of very underserved people. Because these thinking tools, legacy, also you can have $1 in a legacy mindset. You can
yeah.
have $1 billion and not have one. So again, it's organic. It's you feel it. It's you're part of it. That's where legacy comes from. It doesn't weigh anything. It's not in a spreadsheet. It's a feeling amongst humans.
Yeah, I think what you shared in terms of that website, and I'll include that in the show notes.
Okay.
But it's interesting, I think, particularly in today's day and age, with regardless if it's Generation Z or which generation is that's coming up, and they all say, I feel entitled because of the social pressure to, these days it's keeping up with Kardashians, it's not keeping up with the Joneses, but still, it's this
Mm,
idea of,
mm,
yeah,
mm.
so you go
So
ahead.
the antidote to entitlement
Hmm.
is recognizing it's nothing more than a socially sanctioned form of self-loathing and disempowerment.
Well, that's interesting you bring that up because if I don't have the right car or if I have no car, then do I hate myself? And if other people can help me, including family, and they don't,
So that's how the Stoic wisdom philosophers could be extraordinarily rich and
okay.
not spun out by their wealth. They had a very specific philosophy
Hmm.
for ownership. I like that's another fun thing we can do. I can come back and we can do like the philosophy of wealth and whatever.
Well, I think one of the things we spoke about is both in our preamble as well as icebreaker is how much artificial intelligence, AI, is chat GPT, et cetera, are tools that are helping some individuals that can catch on, but then
Mm,
other individuals that aren't catching on. And let's say life is just harder, but yet let's
mm.
say they come from a family of means. How do they then find that purpose and that discipline to be an active steward, to want to
Hmm.
care?
It's super, super delicate balance. And really, we know it's just parental modeling.
Okay, thank you for saying that. Yeah, I can go back to the 1100 billionaires and say, eh, how are they behaving each day in their conduct?
That's it.
Yeah,
So there is no secret. It's these things, it's these common practices around being an organized team, being an organized family, being an organized spouse. It's just about a way of being present with someone that is both dynamic and energetic, but also just alive to possibility, taking you like a little bit to the side one day, a little bit to the side one day. That's how natural systems grow.
yeah, I like that even as a mentoring example, because
Mm.
somebody needs to shadow someone else.
Yes.
They don't just wake up one day and they'll say, "Oh, I know how to handle those investments. I know how to handle the pressure. I know how to handle walking into that social setting, whether that social setting is a cocktail party or a
Mm-hmm.
country club or a networking event."
Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah. Yeah. One of the things we talked about earlier on that you just said was like, I just, when you said network event,
Mhm.
this is something that your families might consider doing is a network event and call it a legacy soul food, something or other. Because
Okay.
as we talked about, legacy is a slow food for the soul.
Yeah, yeah. You mentioned that in the
Make
preamble,
it
and I thought that was yeah, that was like a
bring the
soundbite right there.
food. bring the food, have the food connected to conversations that you care about or not. The food doesn't have to mean anything.
Mhm.
You've got to bring people together with purpose and those shared stories. What I see, this is going to be kind of gross, so we might have to cut this out, but I'm going to
No,
be
that's okay. Bring it on. We've got to
okay.
make this as exciting as sex ed class.
Very good.
So
Then
it's
we'll
not
go.
death and
Then
taxes.
then we'll go straight to the large intestines.
Okay.
So we know that, and I think your audience really understands the power of a sort of comprehensive wellness.
Hmm.
Comprehensive wellness means I'm going to respect all those trillions of cells down in here
Hmm.
that are processing my food and producing the energy that I live on.
Oh, I think that's very neutral. Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah. Let me bring up legacy as a living system. And I thought this
mm,
question was really great because it's
mhm,
absolutely accurate. Many people can create trust and other legal structures, but few create the trust between the people. And I can think about celebrities out here on the West Coast, and it's not just the former actor and comedian Robin Williams that found, his, after he passed away, his family fought in litigation for many years, but it wasn't over the millions. It was over like the bicycle or the baseball cap. And so if we talk about how do you create trust between people, it's like what you had said, in our initially in our preamble this morning, that it's one conversation at a time. Even if it's like
mhm,
awkward to bring up, like, well, who gets the baseball cap? If there's children for
mhm,
multiple marriages, etc. So how
mhm,
can families and individuals
mhm.
design systems that evolve emotionally and not just legally?
Sure. So a simple thing to do is to get a family together and do an example of an awkward question together and just
Hmm.
practice it. Like not Cards Against Humanity, but something like that. Because if a family can at least sit down and be a little bit loose together and say, hey, we're just going to do exercises, right? The
Hmm.
fire department, they practice fighting fires. We don't have a fire right now in our family. That's awesome. Let's not have a fire. But we're going to do things like this that are just like a little bit awkward sometimes.
I think that's a wonderful example because you're
Because
right. That,
because the reps then get you used to having that little bit of vulnerability and openness as a team, and that's how as a team you avoid danger.
hmm. and
Unstable
and
teams that have like one person charging all the time
mhm.
and like running hard. If you see the people that got bin Laden, they were walking, right? That's when I say it's slow, lethal force and lethal legacy of the good kind, it's a walking speed thing. It's a one conversation at a time thing. It's a
Yeah,
piece of discomfort at a time thing, and it's just being in it together.
yeah, I think that's great. Yeah, yeah.
It could be a holiday, it could be a bris, it could be a funeral. It does like the thing is what people have to do is just recognize that if they can just be with themselves, the moments are there. Get your phone out of your face, get the distractions away, commit to just being together and saying legacy is going to invite awkwardness. You might even say, I'm going to write down one question that's so awkward now, I can't even ask it, but I'm going to see if I can do it in 6 months. Everyone writes the question down, they put it in their wallet, and they all walk out.
Oh, I think that's great. And I really
You
appreciate the
you
metaphor about the fire
psychically
department.
load you psychically load that next conversation because most of them, if they're really on the team, they're going to feel that thing in their wallet. It's going to grab a little bit of their mind because we're social beings, and it's going to start to assemble itself. If everyone comes back and there's nothing, you've got a sterile colon. You're
Yeah.
you're you're a candidate for a cultural fecal transplant because your stuff is dead.
Well, I think what you're bringing up is there is going to be some awkwardness, but it's again, it's how do you stay in it, stay committed, and not escape to the reels. Reels are the short videos on Facebook and
Exactly,
Instagram that
exactly. The
provide lots
reels
of
are lethal because
yeah,
you can't think. You're fragmented. Yeah, 100. Sorry. Yes,
yeah, yeah.
the
Thank
reels
you.
are
We got to be in that
fragmented.
present moment. Okay, let's talk about the ROI, the return on investment of this inner work. When you work with
Yep.
heirs and founders, etc., how do you help them see that personal growth? Things like personal development, self-awareness, coaching, therapy, etc.,
Mhm,
is
mhm,
not a
mhm.
cost center, but an investment in legacy continuity.
So I can't make anyone do anything. I can help them see that that is very true. It usually
Okay.
takes about 5 minutes, and I say this is a method of self-construction and self-discovery. I'm here with you to build this. Like it's like a Lego piece. Can you pick up this Lego piece and put it next to this Lego piece? This Lego piece is one sentence. This Lego piece, it's like that. You just have to build it together, small pieces at a time. It's Kaizen. It's just doot 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 doot. It's the practice of doing it that's as equally as valuable.
Yeah. You know what I find interesting these days is more affluent individuals are committing to having a personal coach as well as to therapy. And I'm not sure if it's because the world became more complex or if it's because they feel like so much is coming to the surface right now. And it's
Mm,
like, well, how do we process this so
mm.
I can still be sane in this world? Tell me what you're thinking as you nod.
Yeah, well, so you remember that landscape I showed before?
Okay.
And I can pull it up if it's helpful
Sure.
to
Sure.
to start talking about where are we, where are all of us in this moment who, like you said, there is something happening. There is definitely, I'm 53, so I've lived long enough to see things kind of come and go. It is unquestionable that something is happening. Um, and a lot of it is chaos
In the world today.
in the world today. So I'm going to talk about the chaotic domain.
Hmm.
The chaotic domain is defined by a lack of constraints or no known constraint. So think about the behavior of someone famous, anyone, there are many people, who behaves in a way that simply creates chaos with no
Yeah.
known constraint. You can't build legacy on that.
Ooh. Yeah. You can't build legacy on chaos. And some people are in chaos mode right now because they're so reactionary to the world.
And so the answer is governance policy. And that is my happy place, is to sit with a person who's trying to figure out legacy and introduce one policy idea at a time, like
Hmm.
one card at a time, bumping up against our current set of rules, because it's the only way to make it slow enough and tolerable enough that people don't flip out. And it's
Yeah.
called it's a specific sort of engineering developed by Tom Gill, but I'm happy to share all those links. And
Yeah. What I also think that you do perhaps for your clients is you hold them accountable because it's one thing to show a
oh
wonderful
yeah,
sheet of paper that has a new policy idea on it
oh
or
yeah,
an addendum to a trust agreement, a trust instrument. And yet it's a whole other thing if you say to them, "Hi, I'm Simon and I'm holding you accountable. How's your chaos this week? Did you manage
mm,
it? Or
yes.
did you go back to the comfort zone?"
Yes, and so what I'll
Billionaire.
yeah yeah. Well, although I mean, I also work with school principals
Yeah. Well, all
and
of it.
school treasurers, and we're
Mhm.
all in it. And I think that's really what's changing is the complexity is vast, and that's why people need coaches. A coach gives you the perspective to zoom out on chaos and ask good coaching questions, which are simply the basic coaching clarifying questions. So most of what I do is I'm asking coaching questions to someone who says, we're in chaos. I'm like, yep, I get you. We have constraints that are missing,
Mhm.
structures that are missing, clear definitions and policies that are missing. We go into the bathtub and we start experimenting, and then we walk up those stairs, and
Mhm.
then we've got a recipe, and then we deliver it to everyone else in the legacy system. Ta-da. That is how Amazon delivers improvements to code. That is how you deliver improvements to legacy.
Yeah. It's like a little locker room.
Bingo.
Yeah. Okay. Let me bring up the most common pattern in wealth erosion. Because a lot of
Mm.
times people think about the money, but that's like one piece of it.
It's the
Because
C word. It's the C word, and it's complacency.
say more.
Complacency is I'm good. Things are
Well,
comfortable.
people can think if they're successful, I've arrived. You want me to do more?
So the question is yes, and so people will say like, and I'll be like yes. To where have you arrived? And
Oh.
and what I would recommend is Jim Grubman's book, Strangers in Paradise, because it's
Mhm.
the immigrant narrative of those families who get to the promised land and in two generations have crashed out of the promised land because the social technology, the social capital got not enough attention, and it all focused on the financial capital, and the center wouldn't hold because people can vote with their feet now in ways they couldn't.
Yeah, I appreciate you bring up that you brought up that book because I think that sometimes people can think I was the secret sauce, and yes, you are. But you have to continue to be the secret sauce in that
Yes,
growth mindset, in that
yes,
humility.
and that's what I was saying before is exceptionalism kills everything around it. The I'm special, none of you can match my stuff. That's what
Mhm.
kills legacy.
Yeah.
Because
Someone said to me recently that sometimes somebody can forget who's buttering their bread. And I think what that meant was, yeah, you are talented and you've had a track record of success, and dot dot dot. Um,
Hmm.
there's going to be seasons in your life where you're going to have to fail, not because
Hmm.
you deserve the failure, but it's the baseline changed, the landscape changed.
Correct. And so
Yeah.
the three body problem that we were talking about earlier is a physics problem. And it goes like this. Postulate one. If you have a system that has three parts,
Hmm.
and each of those individual parts can behave in a nonlinear way,
Hmm.
you can't predict the future very far.
Yeah.
Full stop.
And it's
There's a wonder.
changing.
There's a wonderful Chinese sci-fi story called Three Body Problem and a nice Netflix series, not tangentially related, but the three body problem is the proof to the person who says I'm exceptional, everyone should just kiss the ring.
Hmm.
If that person has enough humility to accept that the three body problem is true, it is,
Hmm.
then you're good. If that person's like, nope, not here, run. That is
Yeah.
that is that is a culturally sterile environment, and sterile environments, when things change, die.
Yeah. Okay. So let's stay on this theme of wealth erosion and the most common
Mm,
patterns. So
mm.
what are some of these unseen patterns that causes family wealth and family unity to erode over time?
Yeah. So when I was talking about complacency, that's at a certain level. Before even that, can you just ask the question again? Because I want to. You asked it in a really nice way. I want to just hear that again, please.
Yeah, I was just bringing up the most common patterns in wealth erosion. So in your experience, what are these unseen patterns, if you're willing to name a couple of them, that causes
Yeah.
family wealth as well as family unity to erode over time?
Yeah. So the erosion comes from entropy in relationships between people. When you have enough money, you don't rely on other people as much. So you're in a low gravity environment. Low gravity environments build bonds less well. The wealth drops the environment depending on how much there is. So
Hmm.
everyone has complete optionality. So they don't even have to rely on each other, which means you just get this. That's entropy. That's drift. Bring purpose and enterprise of any kind.
Hmm.
Could be eating hot dogs. Energy is the antidote. Energy is always in there in the rising generation. You just have to ask in a non-jerky way.
Yeah, I think the other word is the C word of curiosity. And I heard an individual who was affluent recently say to me that they didn't realize that they had to be curious because no one was curious with them.
Yep.
And
Yep.
I thought, wow, if that's not a pink elephant in the room, I don't know what is.
Mm-hmm. 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 Yes. Yes. And it's an inconvenient truth.
Because it takes energy to be curious, or because it takes courage to be curious,
Both.
or we have to care about more than ourselves to be curious.
All of the above. And
Yeah.
again, if you have that top-down controlling system,
Mm-hmm.
who tells people what to value, who tells them both where to go and how to get there,
Mm-hmm.
you squash the drive that all humans have to build with other humans.
That's interesting. So, would you name any other unseen patterns that can cause family wealth and family unity to erode over time? Because, again, like you brought up
Mm.
Jim
Yep.
Grubman's book, somebody
Yep.
arrives at this place
Yep.
where they may not be in survival anymore. They
Sure.
might, as I think Kanye West once rapped in a song, at one point he had to worry about whether he had shoelaces or not. Maybe that was his Yee song or something.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways,
Mm-hmm.
or Jesus
Mm-hmm.
Walks or
Mm-hmm.
whatever the hip hop song is. So, if
Mm-hmm.
someone gets to this place where they don't have to worry about their shoelaces, they might not know how to stay on that island.
For sure. For sure. And to loop back to one of your earlier questions, Kanye is a good example of one of the big problems. This is going to be really awkward for maybe half your viewers. Male inability to express emotional needs.
Oh, he was angry. Did you think he
Mm-hmm.
didn't
So
express?
no, no. In general, in our industry, leaving Kanye aside,
Hmm.
what's blocking families from having these conversations is men inability to express emotional need.
Oh, that's interesting.
That blocks a tremendous amount of legacy conversation. Because men, and I take myself as a prime example of someone who, on a monthly basis, my wife will point out, this male inability. Men are not trained to do this, and most of us suck until we find either an older man who shows us wisdom
That it's okay to be
or
vulnerable.
precisely to not know everything, to not be superhero, to not be the Rambo, but that strength is in bringing people together, holding conversation, right? Men's inability to have or talk about emotions is what kills legacy faster than almost everything except maybe arrogance.
Oh, that's so interesting. I don't think my father listens to my podcast, so I can go and put him on the spot for a moment. I, uh, I'm interviewing him again right now for an hour a day. I
Wonderful.
interviewed both my parents for about 10 hours during COVID, so that would have been the year 2020. And then
Hmm.
my MacBook crashed and I lost those recordings. And so now I know
Oh
to
no.
upload them to the cloud, okay? Because my sister doesn't have the time to do this. But what I
Hmm.
find so interesting is, and he's almost 80, but
Hmm.
it's very interesting if I have to ask him to speak about struggle and he's almost 80. It's like still this idea of males are not supposed to show vulnerability.
That's it.
And I'm
That's
his
the
child, his adult child, but yeah.
yes. That is the
Yeah.
fear. That is the unnamed fear that stops a lot of legacy conversation.
Yeah. But at least he's doing the work and showing up when I ask him. I just have to keep asking him and keep asking him and keep
And
asking him and
and
keep
I've
asking him.
actually almost never met a man who was aligned with his family who couldn't easily rise to the challenge and exceed what people expected once he got some training wheels and some coaching.
He has actually, my father has exceeded my expectations.
A little bit
Yeah.
of coaching goes a long way for a motivated man who wants to show up for his family.
Yeah. Okay. Let me go on to the next question since I have a window of time with you today. So let's talk about designing, let's say, for more than three generations.
Mm-hmm.
And there
Mm-hmm.
are families such as the Rothschilds across the ponds. And whether you like
Mm-hmm.
all of their decisions and choices or you don't like all of them, they do have some best practices
Mm-hmm.
because they started from a place of strategy and um, innovation, etc.
Mm-hmm.
They
Mm-hmm.
didn't. They weren't born with money. I think their originally their name was Bauer, and then they changed it to Rothschild, which means Red Shield. So, what tools? And the question for this podcast episode: what tools or mindset shifts help a family move from a one generation success story to a multi generational enterprise of meaning, values, and capital?
It's as simple as a multi-generational narrative.
Mm,
So for the Rothschilds,
hmm
they existed in Europe as Jews and
hmm
existed under a shared pressure and unsafety that was not good in a absolute sense, but created a sort of ingenuity, adaptiveness, higher trust levels because they had that pressure on them. So to your earlier point, a zero pressure environment, that's not great. Too much pressure, that's hard. What the Rothschild had was this thing, it's called an enabling constraint. And it just kept them wanting to work, do, build, be together. They didn't always like it, but they had this thing, that seed that kept the legacy at the center. And that's what legacy leaders do. To be honest, in my family, it's my brother. He's younger than
mm,
me, but he's got this thing that I just don't have. So the legacy leader can be anyone in a family. It's an emotional thing. It's a here thing. You don't
hmm
know the lion by the size of their body.
hmm
Look for that person. Think of it as think of the legacy thing as needing all different kinds of people, not just one kind.
Yeah. Well, I think it's important to be able to talk about different mindsets because, again, school, public or private school, is not going to teach this. They might teach us how to be an amazing employee. They might
Hmm.
teach us a bunch of case studies, but it's really who are your mentors out in this world and how willing are you to keep learning and keep learning and keep learning?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Recognizing that not knowing things is the precondition to learning. So not trying to be an expert right away and show off is just like important. And too many people would just want instant results and then they give up.
Yeah.
And
So,
that doesn't work.
so if I circle back to this question of what tools are mindset shifts, I think one
Yep.
of the tools that you brought up was you used the word like enabling and
Enabling
what
constraint.
yeah. And what I think about is oftentimes if someone is backed into a corner, that is the time that they will grow. But if they've got three or four choices, they're going to be lottie dottie. It's only
Yep.
when they're backed in that corner and they've got to walk through some experience that they don't want to walk through because they don't have any other choice
Mm-hmm.
other
Mm-hmm.
than for them to become refined. Because either the cream rises to the top or it doesn't rise to the top. And it's sometimes it could be life or death.
And so the time to pass through that is proportional to how alone that first person feels or how much they feel held by a team.
Mm.
When you're held by a team, that transition can happen fast. When it's just you alone up there, it can be decades.
Oh, that's interesting. Oh, that's so interesting. I was just watching something the other day. Tony Robbins had this AI webinar uh,
Mm,
the last 3 or 4 days, and it
mm.
was just fascinating. And so I was thinking about how individuals these days can just log on if they've got an internet connection wherever they are in the world.
So return on curiosity or return on ingenuity,
Hmm.
those are the key things. Because once you've got this many LLMs running around, it's curiosity that's going to both keep you sane and enjoying life and not just expecting novelty to be like piped into your neck. It's also the thing that the AIs can't do. They can't predict the future because the three body problem, it's still in charge,
Yeah.
like we
So,
talked about.
yeah, return on curiosity, the ROC, rock.
Yeah,
Yeah.
or return on inquiry,
Yeah.
ROI. Return on inquiry is the ROI that I'll like. A family's like, well, what's the ROI? I'm like, well, what are you trying to build? If you want a curious person, it's return on inquiry.
Hmm. Yeah, there is this, before I go on to the next question, there was this one particular speaker, and he's built this surfing business. And not everyone's
Huh.
going to be obviously in the surfing business, but the point that he was making was he said it's 90% AI, 10% human. In other words, he keeps learning, even if he's delegating out prompt engineering
Yes,
instructions, but his
yes,
brain is always realizing that he's got to go over everything. But he called it his thought partner, not his thought leader. And I
bingo.
thought, okay, well, that's a very good distinction because then he's not losing himself in it. It's the same thing
So,
if I
mhm.
go back to the Rothschilds for a moment, again, whether you love them or hate them for all their choices and decisions, in the business world, they still said, okay, well, does money make the man or do we make the money? In other words, they understood capital, but then they had other forms of capital. Because I heard something along the lines of that they have these family meetings and they have their family members come with like book reports regarding intellectual capital. And I thought, well,
That's true.
how interesting. I haven't
Yeah,
gone to a family picnic where I had to report in with a book report.
right, right. And again, for some families that can be cool and useful. Some families it's just drudgery.
Yeah.
So it's like being sensitive to where the family is the
Hmm.
most important thing for anyone who wants to help somebody is figure out where they actually are, not where you think they should be or stuff like that. And I make that mistake less and less over time, but still.
Yeah. There was another speaker, another individual that pays his child $25 to read the book, but then to get the
Hmm.
child motivated. But the child will do a really good job, but there is a reward. And so I thought, interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean that's a short game, but again, some kids love money. So
Hmm.
that what that person did with two different kids could have
Hmm.
gotten opposite results because one kid just doesn't care about money and the other one does. So this is again where it's so nuanced. If you want to
Hmm.
really build something, you have to start with just how the humans are, not with a recipe.
Hmm.
And I think in that way, people feel like, oh, I've got to be ready or I've got to be in some way before I can start. That's just not true.
Yeah, we all have a first day. Yeah. If you could give one piece of advice, either to a self-made success, like one of those 1,100 billionaires, or a
Mm,
next generation
mm.
who might be listening, or even to someone who's in a leadership position, like a school principal, uh, regarding this subject of designing a legacy and being proactive about it, what would you tell them?
Every day you do nothing is a day that you add to your legacy deficit.
Ooh, say that one more time, please.
Every day you talk yourself out of doing something and the world changes. You're creating a micron of debt. That's called tech debt in the computer world. Stack
Mm-hmm.
up enough tech debt and your
Mm-hmm.
system fails. Don't do it.
Yeah,
Find a
yeah,
friend. Find a friend. Make it fun because it's the future. We get to build it.
yeah. Very cool. Okay, this is the part where we get personal on this podcast.
Okay. Luckily, my wife is now sitting over here, so she's going to be a good restraint on my what I
Yeah,
might say.
yeah, she's going to offer some moral support. What does this word legacy mean to you personally? And in one or two sentences, what would you like your legacy to be?
My legacy to my family would be someone who learned to listen and then kept learning after that.
Hmm. Hmm.
And maybe
Okay.
and was like, if I had to be an animal, I would be like a great white shark of just learning and curiosity.
Well, that's awesome. So, what does this word legacy then mean to you personally compared to the dictionary definition?
So I identify as a man of faith. I was raised in a Zen Buddhist household. So legacy is funny because to me, when you think about in those faith traditions, me is not quite the same category.
Hmm.
So I would want to be remembered for, again, just a passionate curiosity that I just infected lots and lots and lots of people with, because they saw it being somehow better for them, especially in the sort of abundant world that we live in now.
Yeah. Before I close this out, would you share a good website if a listener would like to learn more about your work and you?
Oh, sure. CrowBoxPartners.com, all smashed together, one word. CrowBox partners.com. And I'll tell your listeners that a CrowBox is a collaborative learning space.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah. I would like to circle back to how we started today's
Mm-hmm.
conversation episode with this intention of, what if you could feel a settling in your mind, heart, and body with this idea of planning your legacy? Because oftentimes there can be a sense of agitation or
Mm-hmm.
confusion of where is it that I start?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that you made some really great points in terms of the fulfilling the business promise that we set out at the onset. That legacy happens one conversation at a time. You referred to legacy as slow food for the soul, and also realizing that it is what we carry forward, even if we might feel afraid at the very beginning of being irrelevant, and that family traditions weigh nothing. And you also brought up this point about scarcity thinking. Can others handle the discomfort? And the answer is, well, they should, but you have to keep trying. You have to continue to be curious and to show up and to ask. And the return on the ROI, you said, yeah, that it's
Yeah.
not just return on investment, it could be return on intention, return on, what was the I word you used?
Return on inquiry.
Inquiry, that's right, yes. And legacy might invite awkwardness,
Mm-hmm.
but we don't have to be a Rambo to design it.
No, because we can always help each other build a better path.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure to host you.
Thank you so much.
In closing, I'm Angelina Carleton, the hostess of the Design Your Legacy podcast, as well as the founder of Legacy Planning, a boutique coaching and advisory firm based out of Beverly Hills, California, USA, but international in those I get to consult. I hope to dive deep into subjects that can help a person define, develop, and execute their legacy, and continue to scour the landscape for those who can be great resources to every dimension of your legacy. For many listeners and viewers, there can never be enough education and preparation in the moat or moat around your castle. Whether you find yourself with new wealth or generational wealth, may the content on this channel be an anchor in any storms ahead. We do our best to provide original content for your intellectual and emotional curiosity. If you're tuning in today on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, etc., etc., please remember to rate and review, share with your family and friends. And if you feel so inclined, send an email to either Simon or myself and let us know your thoughts and feelings about today's content. So thank you so much for joining, and thank you, Simon, for speaking into your legacy.